Hello everyone, welcome to Blue Mondays, the GLORIO blog's Eureka 7 recap podcast. We are deep into the show at this point. We are getting massive game-changing revelations every episode, but there's also plenty of time for goofy-ass comedy filler as well there. That's the Eureka 7 difference. I am joined, as always, by my lovely co-hosts, Aqua. Hello, Aqua.
Eureka 7 is the only anime that will give you horny teenager shenanigans on top of your melodrama.
Truly, it's a combination that has never been attempted before or since then. Speaking of horny teenage melodrama, we are also joined by G. Hello, G.
I can't believe we all want to be daddies now, right? That's
Yes.
how it works.
Yep.
We all want to be dads.
Yeah.
Even from beyond the grave, Shinzo Abe continues to haunt us. This week, we are talking about episode 37, Raise Your Hand, and episode 38, Date of Birth. And kind of schizophrenic pair of episodes, honestly. Like, how did you guys feel about the two of these paired together?
I mean, this is just last episode times 3. Like... the big contrast between like a revelatory plot, almost entirely exhibition-based episode, and then a goofy, let's call it gender role-based comedy filler-ish episode.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a little crossover between the two there, but yes, we definitely have the silly episode and the serious episode division writ large in this week's pair of episodes there.
I think, I mean, maybe the one thing that is like, not notable because, like, I think Eureka 7 has done this before, obviously, but I think the noticeable thing is, I think after the big kind of spectacle of like the last couple of episodes, right, where they're springing Norb out, they're assaulting the Capitol. I think it's interesting that like these episodes are kind of once again a holding pattern, right? Or not that our heroes are not active, right? But more, I mean, they are mostly reactive to the plot events of these two episodes, right? Like,
yeah, and I think that makes sense from a story structure, right? We've just had a set of episodes where our heroes have been very proactive, and these episodes are more about seeing the world reacting to the things they have done, right?
And it is thematically relevant too, because like the previous episode, or at least the previous major plot element, a big thing was that they had managed to outwit Dewey, that they were one step ahead of him. And in these episodes, Dewey sort of turns the tables and seizes the initiative, and it's our heroes who are forced to react to whatever it is doing, or however he is escalating the conflict.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a time to put sort of our heroes back on the defensive and put our villains back on the offensive, so to speak there. Let's kick it off with episode 37, Raise Your Hand. Now, this title is a musical reference to a song by the Japanese electronic artist Keigo Oyamada, better known by his handle Cornelius. There.
Yes, well-known Shibuya K innovator and high school bully Cornelius.
Yes, I see you are way ahead of me on this one there. Yes. The song is called Raise Your Hand Together. It's from his debut album, The First Question Award, which was released in 1994. As Aqua alluded to, Oyamada is regarded as one of sort of the founders of the Shibuya K sound. He co-founded Flipper's Guitar, who were one of the early and sort of seminal bands of the movement there. He has had a very long musical career. He's still active today after starting in the late 80s there. And yes, as you alluded to, he was involved in some controversy where he talked about how actually bullying in school is fun and good, which, was perhaps not as big a scandal as it was whipped up to be, but also was not great, was maybe not great.
He was Mr. Writing the theme of the Olympics, right? Was that the...
Yes, that was the context. So he made the statements in the early 90s in an interview, and that stuff sort of fell off the map until he was chosen to write the music for the Olympics, or was one of the people who was chosen to write the music for the 2020 Olympics opening ceremony. And then, that stuff came out and he had to make apologies. And
it was also specifically within the context that he confessed to, as a student, bullying a student with a disability, and him also being involved with the Paralympics. That was, of course, a bad look.
Yes, and the situation seems to have been a little bit more complicated than it sounds on the surface, and also 2Channel got involved, which is always, when things get messy and bad faith, quite frankly. But it certainly wasn't a great look for him, and he did apologise, but how sincere that apology was, it's up to you, but he is, at the time of this episode, let's say, he was just a notable, pop and electronic musician there. Western fans might know him best for the fact that he contributed a song to the soundtrack of the Scott Pilgrim versus the World film. Yep. He did
really?
the backing track Katy and Nagai Twins versus Sex Bob-omb, which is the DJ battle song in that film. There,
that actually makes sense, because one of his famous quotes about defining the Shibuya-kei movement is, "It is 1/3 Beatles, 1/3 Beck, 1/3 bossa nova." And Beck was also heavily involved in the production. He made He made a lot of music. I think he made the songs that are like Sex Bob-omb's song in the movie were written and performed by Beck. So
they seem way too good to be written by Beck.
I was so curious which way the Zigg barb would land. Would it hit Beck or would it hit Scott Pilgrim? I was so curious which way that one was going to go.
I actually kind of like Beck. I will say that Beck's music pretty good. Beck's appearance in Futurama, an all-timer. One of the best guest stars that show ever had.
Also, Zigg is British. He's legally not allowed to dislike Edgar Wright movies. So.
Yes, it's true, admittedly. I am wearing my shirt that says "Ask me anything about the world's end." I do not actually own a shirt that says "Ask me anything about the world's end." But anyway, yes, the point is Oyamada, or Cornelius, well-known Japanese music figure. Given how obscure the references have been fairly recently, one of the more notable figures we've had, I think, is fair to say there. This episode opens with a press conference, or something approaching a press conference here. Stoner appears to have arranged a debate me bro meeting between Dr. Bear and Misha and Norb.
Yeah, just own a religious figurehead with facts and knowledge.
Yes. So they never come out and say it here, but I think the idea here is that they're sort of recording material to be broadcast out to the general population, explaining what the hell is going on, right? That's what I took from it, at least.
I mean, Stoner specifically refers to it as his scoop, right? It is his intention to record this interview, turn it into an interview, and have it go out as sort of the thing that can turn the masses against Dewey and the Federation.
Right. I think it's important to remember that prior, this is the episode where, Dewey's speech happened. So prior to that happening, I think Stoner's aim was to try to get their version of the story published and out there, to the public.
Right. Yes. And I'm going to say that this is not really an incredibly well put together advert, because Norb and Dr. Bear mostly seem to be more concerned with baiting each other than actually delivering a unified message. So this segment, I think, is perhaps one of the segments that is most indicative of this show's place as a post-Evangelion mecha show. Does that make sense? The key idea which is introduced here, and we've sort of had it hinted at in previous episodes, is the thing they call the question limitation, which is, firstly,
instrumentality. It's just human instrumentality again.
Well, let me clarify firstly. The question limitation, although presented as an actual scientific theory, is not an actual scientific theory. I feel like I need to emphasize this very correctly. Aqua, as the person who is new to this, like, can you explain to us what you think the question limitation is from the details in this episode?
Dr. Bear seems to imply that there is some kind of metaphysical limit to the amount of sentient thought that the planet can tolerate on it. Right?
Yeah, you got it in one, basically.
Yeah, and that, like, when the Coralian, which is sentient, awakens, that will make the number of, conscious beings skyrocket to a degree that the planet just says nope and resets itself and wipes everything out. Like,
yeah, it's more even really than the planet. It's kind of the laws of physics will not allow this, and
it's kind of entropy coded.
A little bit. Like there's some lip service paid to the idea that thought energy is actual energy and energy warps space-time and all sorts of, vaguely relativity adjacent concepts like that. I think this concept is one of the more controversial aspects of the Eureka 7 story overall, I would say.
It's definitely the part that, like, again, my feelings on Evangelion are complex and long, but, like, at the core of it is why, like, I tend to call it, like, what I tend to call a thing post-Ava, sometimes that in that bracket is derogatory, is because, like, I think I fall into a weird issue here because this almost feels like they are scrambling to come up with a new justification for, like, why Coralians and humans potentially cannot coexist, when you already had, I think, the very relatable pre-existing tangible example of, like, supposedly the issues of their coexistence, which is humanity bombing them and them lashing out in kind. And, like, that already feels like a very natural, relatable way to understand a conflict between two sentient species. And so to then introduce this idea, but also if they all think at the same time the world explodes, feels and like the way in which they then try to, like, justify, like, it by, like, tying that back to, like, oh, see, that's what, like, trapar waves are, and you see the compact drive is, like, an amplifier for blah blah blah. It's, I don't know, it's,
yeah, I think
I really don't know how much it adds to Eureka 7 for me personally, at least.
Yeah, I think the specifically post-Evangelion part of this is the need to sort of justify a lot of these concepts through science-y sounding exposition, if that makes sense.
Right, but it's not even science, and I think that's the thing that makes
right, yes. Right. And that is the Evangelion thing, right? Evangelion, a lot of the things that happen in Evangelion are magic. They are symbolic. They are meant to be. They're not literal. They're metaphorical. But the thing is, Ava did a good job of dressing up those ideas in the language of science and in the language of technobabble. And a lot of people got really into that because the people who are into giant robot shows are big nerds. And I think what that did was sort of permanently, or for a very long time at least, meant that when you did have metaphysical concepts in robot shows, they sort of had to be justified through some sort of application of scientific sounding technique, right?
Right. There doesn't really seem to be any symbolism in this whole lore, let's call it, that wasn't already present in the show, right? In Evangelion, it at least makes sense because the entire show is about human connections and reaching out to others. But here, the added sort of tension that is created by this idea of, like, oh, if there is too much sentient thought on the planet will cease to exist. Like, what is the point? Like, what are you trying to say with this?
Well, I think it's partially a plot device. I think it is partially a way to ratchet the tension even higher, right?
It's like a Hail Mary to make Dewey even more threatening, as if, like, the world needs to be threatened because for some reason him bombing his own people and staging a coup and turning the country into a fascist police state is somehow not enough of a threat to make our heroes like get off their asses.
Yeah, and it feels a little. I don't know how to say it and there will be other sort of, I don't want to say reasons, but sort of vaguely alluded to concepts that will tie into the question limitation as we go forward. But it does feel a little bit like they're trying to. It just feels like they're gilding the lily a little bit too much. It's an attempt to make the battle truly existential by invoking science technobabble rather than it just being existential because Dewey is evil and will kill the Scubcoal, and that's somehow not evil enough. It has to be a war against existence, basically.
It's the modern Doctor Who problem, right? The world always needs to be at stake.
Right, but that's not necessarily an issue, because since this is a limited series, the world really can be at stake. The world really can be on the line, so to speak. But it's like the show has sort of lost the courage of its convictions that total environmental collapse is not somehow an existential enough threat, so we must have this weird metaphysical threat as well. It just feels a little bit out of nowhere, and also a little bit. It's just not very compelling. Like the thing about Evangelion is that all the fake science in that show is at least compelling on some level. It's weird and creepy, and it doesn't have to be plausible. It just sort of has to sound plausible. And this really is right on the edge of plausibility in any aspect, I think.
I think there is a kernel of something interesting in like this idea that, this entropic idea, right? That the universe can only handle this much chaos, and that chaos stems forth from sentient thought because sentient creatures can make decisions. So their behavior cannot be predicted. But that would be something for a different show with different themes. And it's just an extra layer of schmear on top that is like not necessary, right? You don't want the triple cheeseburger because the double cheeseburger is the perfect ratio of meat to bun.
Look, there's a reason that they never really elaborate on what the spiral nemesis actually is in Gurren Lagann, because they know that that it doesn't actually matter.
Yes.
It's sort of, like the spiral nemesis is like a vague representation of like the opposite of what makes humankind unique, but it is a metaphorical representation. They don't go out of their way to come up with like scientific sounding theories for what the spiral nemesis is on a like metaphysical level, right?
Right. And we've talked about the legacy of Ava a lot here, but in a certain sense this is also an original sin traceable back to like Gundam, for example, where new types cannot simply be space magic. There must be, all the stuff about evolutionary levels and stuff. And I get it because, again, in Evangelion and even in Gundam, the layer of scientific bullshit does add a compelling sort of, again, not believability, but semi-plausibility to the thing. And I think that the show is trying to say something fairly high concept here. I just think that it's a flawed execution.
I wonder if this is something that is sort of inherent to the mecha genre, that mecha can never truly be hard sci-fi because the concept of a mecha is just something a little bit spectacular and outlandish. So,
I mean, it's not even that. The concept of a mecha is scientifically and mathematically sort of impossible. The square cube law proves that.
Right, but I think what Aqua's getting it at is that like a mech is broadly usually a machine, a man-made machine, and so that is always going to connect it to science fiction, and that is always going to connect it to a little bit of that, as we say, that nerd desire to like justify or explain or like give it some sort of like theoretical bedrock to stand on, right? Whether that's Minovsky particles or whatever, right?
It's like, cool that we can draw a schematic of the Starship Enterprise, right? Like
exactly, right.
There's always the desire to make these things seem more real than the story allows.
Right. It's kind of that separation of like, we don't ever, like nobody ever asks like, I don't know, like where does Goku get all the energy to go Super Saiyan, right? Because we intrinsically understand that's magic, right? Like we don't question it, right? Whereas the aesthetics of mecha, I think, or sci-fi in general, I think inherently tend to invite those questions more, even if like the artifice is just as like intentionally artificial as fantasy.
That's kind of what I was trying to get at. Yeah, the thing is like a mech is a machine, so it is a result of science, but it is also an inherently impossible thing. It is a thing that exists because it is cool. So I get the feeling that many mech writers have this idea of like, okay, we need some sort of like magical, fantastical element in our story to sort of justify that, right? And that goes back to Gundam as well with the new types.
Yeah, and I will say that the number of purely magical mecha shows is actually surprisingly low. There is, as G has said, as you have said, an inherent desire to justify the existence of mechs in some scientific seeming way, even if science cannot entirely, even if real science cannot entirely explain them. So I think the thing they're trying to do here is interesting and sort of fits into the storytelling style of Eureka 7, which is already, quite a heady blend of religion, magic, and science. But this one I just feel is kind of a bridge too far, really.
I think if there's anything to be potentially taken from this scene, I think it is just kind of interesting, though, that, again, like in a show that is like trying to justify a lot of this with like, pseudo-scientific technobabble. I think it is interesting, though, that like, at least as it's presented here, right, in this sort of debate, quote unquote, between like Dr. Bear and Misha and Norb, right, that Norb and the teachings of the Vodorak seem to be largely couched as like the like correct interpretations of like the metaphysics of this universe, right? Like, we were joking earlier about, destroyed with facts and logic, right? But it's like, it's kind of the religious guy doing that a little bit, right?
Yeah, Checkmate atheists.
Yeah, there's a little bit of Checkmate atheists to it, right? Except, obviously I think it's like Dr. Bear especially is quite, he's already been like sort of like framed as an eccentric even within the scientific community,
right? He's a believer.
Right? But like it is sort of like there is something to this idea of like Norb is like, that's a Vodorak teaching, and like Dr. Bear is like, see, I knew it. Like I've had that theory for years that like whatever, right? But
yeah, and it's quite a fun dynamic because they sort of unfurl the exposition by going backwards and forwards between the two of them. That Norb will say something quite magical and spacey, and then Dr. Bear will jump in with a more grounded explanation, if not necessarily a more factual one there. And yeah, I think it is an entertaining scene. I think the character dynamics keep it from becoming a boring exposition dump, and it's fun to see these two characters sort of just bounce off each other a little bit there. Norb does do a lot of talking about the 10th plane, the 7th plane, the 3rd plane. Here,
that shit is, I don't.
that is religio babble, right? That is just like we made some vaguely Buddhist things to make this sound like a real religion. Like
I did like the point, the bit where he points out that Vodorak is not like a person or like a deity, it's a state of mind. He says Vodorak is a state that has a will of its own, which is a lot like Buddhahood, if you think about it there. Because
and back, and it's
yeah, definitely we're getting into some ha and car stuff there. Anybody who's played Death Stranding will recognize this particular brand of weird sort of soul-focused bullshit, basically.
Maho Shoujo, and if you take the Ma from Maho and the Shoujo from Shoujo, you get Majo. Checkmate, atheists.
Yes. It's all right, though, because here to save us from both expo dumps and horrible Coralians is heroic Anemone, the hero who everybody loves.
Yes, the super heroic mech design, the end.
Yes.
They really couldn't have considering the events of this episode, they really couldn't have like done a last minute like white, blue, and red paint job on this thing.
Just kind of like make it look a little friendlier, at least, Anemone making her big heroic gesture by almost drowning this mother and son in blood is quite nicely ironic.
Hey, now the Ageha squad did some good market research, and they have figured out that in this day and age, the majority of people would actually prefer to be stepped on by a lady than be saved by them.
Of course, yes.
Anyway, this sort of leads into probably the most important thing in this episode, which is Dewey's New Order sort of coup d'etat speech, which is a masterpiece of just every sort of like confidence trick, false flag operation, sort of undermine the government thing you can possibly imagine. It's all here. You've been like, the government has been lying to you. Breaking news coming in that a disaster has happened. Don't worry though, I've set up a secret special super squad and here they are and they're all hot women, hurrah. he really lays it on here.
I think what's really quite I guess now, especially now that I'm older, is like impressive and fascinating about this scene, right? Is as you say, Zigg, it is the totality of in which Dewey has won the quote-unquote culture war here, the way in which he frames his rebellion, right? Like even the like pseudo-martyrdom aspect, when he's like, I can't hold it in anymore, like even though it hurts me, I have to tell the truth, it's like everything, right? Like even the like way in which he phrases like, oh, I don't want to take power, I'm doing like, I hate to do this, like, oh, this is the great tragedy is that I am the one who has to break this truth to you, right? It's like,
like I said, every trick in the book, the dramatic interruption in the middle where, one of the Ageha squad comes up to him, a second Coralian has hit the tower, and kind of like showing all the horrible violence on the screen, the linking himself to the legacy of the world's existing hero. Don't worry, the great Adrock planned for this, and I am the avatar of his will.
Right. The classic actually Adrock wrote down on the back of a notebook. These are my last words. Dewey, save the world, or whatever. Goodbye.
What Abraham Lincoln wanted when he founded the Republican Party.
God, and it's like. All right, as you say, the false flag, right? Again, he is the cause of the Coralians, slaughtering cities, but and like, yes, like having the Ageha squad, like they're perfectly situated to swoop in, save the day, like cutting off communication to the capital. I actually chose to read that as, is the capital still recovering from Gecko State's attack on it?
No, I think the thing is that he is about to launch a bunch of the orange weapons into the capital.
Right. I mean, I know that's probably happening, but I was trying to remember, like...
I think that's just oops, I guess nobody from the capital can get in touch with us.
Right, exactly. Well, just the fact that he has cut off all communications with the capital, right? And thus is able to frame the narrative however he pleases, right? And if the capital is still a little bombed from, like, Gecko State's, like, attack, adds to the... supports the story, right?
Yeah, I mean, one of the marks of a true master of propaganda is taking something that actually happened and then putting a spin on it so it can benefit you, right?
Right. And
he wasn't necessarily planning for the Gecko to attack, but it does provide a whole bunch of convenient excuses.
What I do find interesting here is the role of the media in it, because I get the feeling this plan would only work as well as it does in a landscape with only state-controlled media, right? Where you just have the one news channel that reports, and if Dewey says, "Oh, we don't know anything from from the capital, that is something that would be... I get the feeling that would be really strange in a situation where you didn't already have a vaguely authoritarian regime in place, right?
I mean, there is already a dictatorship in place,
Yeah,
of course,
that's the thing, right?
but also, like, you don't need explicit state media to carry state messages. Examples of this include Right Here, Right Now.
Yes.
But,
Okay, yeah, Zigg beat me to it. I don't want to, don't want to get too political on this podcast, but you just have to look at the ways in which mainstream news outlets have manufactured consent for whichever is your pet topic of choice, right? But I think you only need to look at like the ways in which because it's so easy to just point at the like right wing or authoritarian or like sympathetic networks and go, see, like, yeah, it's they're basically state run media. But I think you even look at like centrist or even vaguely left leaning like mainstream like news networks, and they will often like report the exact same things, right? In the ways the state wishes them to.
And also, Dewey has the ultimate trump card here, which is there really is a crisis happening. That's the thing,
that
right?
is also the
people,
thing.
the media are only reporting what they are seeing themselves, which is giant monsters really are coming out of the earth and killing cities full of people. Now, of course, nobody knows that is because of Dewey, but the crisis is real. There's no faking that bit.
At least Reagan funneled the crack into the cities himself, man. Come on.
Yes. God. But, there's a lot of classic imagery here as well. We get Dewey at the podium, we get the Hitler cam and everything. I was reminded a great deal of Shah's New Era speech in Shah's Counterattack here.
Even does like the grasp towards the camera thing,
I mean, yeah, no, that is again a classic of the
of course,
of the genre. Yeah, but like Koji Sujitani even sounds a bit like Shuichi Ikeda in this bit.
I think he's trying to channel it, and I think obviously yes, the real inspiration is every speech given by a fascist or dictator in history. But I think in the realm of anime, I think this is one where you can definitely say the shadow of Shah's Counterattack looms large on a lot of other mecha anime.
This is also specifically like Leni Riefenstahl's Triumph of the Will.
Oh yeah, that's why I said you've got the Hitler cam and everything, and
the specific sort of like bombastic cinematography. Yeah.
And the power of spectacle. Having the Agaha squad come down. One detail that I really like in this episode, I'm not sure whether it's intentional, but it works otherwise. When we see her in the end, Anemone is drawn really pointy in this episode. She's drawn extremely sort of sallow and sharp, but the moment she gets out and is like posing for the cameras, she's extremely cute and fluffy, and everybody's America's sweetheart and everything like that. And that's just a nice little bit of visual direction there, I think. But yeah, this is a playbook that we have seen thousands of times in real life and in fiction as well there.
I do like how he appears to be in a football stadium.
Yeah.
Only like 200 people showed up.
Also, that's the thing. It's not even a full stadium. But I mean, that's propaganda, right? That is that is...
I mean, the camera can't see that, and that also means you can probably select the crowd very carefully, right? So it's...
There were actually millions of people at my inauguration.
Yes. But yes, as Stoner says, when someone tells a lie this big, the people won't be able to see the truth. And it certainly seems that the public is behind Dewey. He is a solution, even if he perhaps might not be the perfect one. He is at least proposing a course of action. And of course, as we said, the fact that he ties himself to Adrock, who people still believe to be, the hero of the age, is... again, one of those things which is not entirely false, as we'll see in the next episode, but is certainly goosing the truth more than a little bit.
Yes.
I think it just very nicely showed up how the old guard, the old regime, set up all of the weapons and strategies Dewey could use for himself, right? They already propped up Adrock as a sort of scapegoat / hero, and now he can just like use that to his own ends. The same thing for the state-controlled media, the same thing for, the general infrastructure of a police state already being in place.
Right. I mean, like, again, like, not to get too fucking real about it, right? But this is like often like how authoritarian governments or people get into control, right? Is like they're not, they're not inventing fascism wholesale. Like they are using the leverages of power that already existed, right? Like the Federation was already a fairly authoritarian regime, right? It may not have been as authoritarian as Dewey, but like,
I mean, it was a theocracy that was largely hands-off, let's say, and now it has just sort of effortlessly slid into being a dictatorship that is, in fact, fairly hands-on.
Yeah.
It just shows that, like, the thing is, right, a revolution is never truly a revolution. It is mostly just a spark that lit a fuse, leading to a bunch of TNT that has been set up over the course of, like, 40, 50, 60 years.
I mean, like, and history has taught us that crises are dangerous precisely because charismatic people can use them to sort of wedge themselves into the levers of power. That's what Hitler did. That's what Napoleon III did. All of these examples from history. You only need to sort of manufacture the opportunity to take control. And this is what the sages have been worried about all along. They recruited Dewey back because he was, I think, a person who would do the things and take the risks that they could not. And guess what? It turns out that leopards ate their faces instead. Yes, but we get a little bit of wrap up at the end here. I really like Norb's farting entrance into which is just one of those ridiculous bits of like, I ate too many beans. It's like, what is he like? They really are trying to paint Norb as just the dirtbaggiest dirtbag possible.
It's just very funny that they managed to, like, turn Holland around, and now that he has finally become a vaguely sympathetic character, they have saddled him with his own Holland. Like,
hey, that's karma for you. Now he is the one who has to deal with this unruly dirtbag there. We also have a scene where Dominic is like, oh, wow, I guess the capital really is under attack.
Yep.
Who could have seen this coming other than Commander Dewey? And I'm just like, Dominic, you are the stupidest motherfucker alive, really.
In episode 10, are we the baddies? Dominic in episode 20, are we the baddies?
It's not even, are we? He's just no awareness whatsoever of any sort of ulterior motive from anybody else.
It's a 50 episode TV series. It's going to take Dominic a little time to
49 episodes.
To internalize some of the things that are going on here.
Like I said, Trust Fund Baby, he has never known any better. Like,
we do get the scene with Norb does contain a nice little subversion, which is he's not worried about Eureka and Renton being too close. In fact, he's worried that she's getting too human too fast.
Yes,
which is an interesting way to, because traditionally the story structure is, we want the weird alien girl to be fixed by human kindness and human warmth and human emotion, and this has very much been a story like that up to this point. And now Norb is sort of hinting at, no, we kind of want her to be a weird plant thing instead.
I get the feeling this is like set up for the reveal why Norb was not the chosen one, right?
I mean, that's coming. I don't think it's a spoiler to say that will be explored in upcoming episodes there. But
I think this is the thing, right? That he believes that it needs to be a human and a Coralian piloting Nirvash together, and therefore the Coralian cannot become human. And that is going to be what sets him apart from...
Yeah, and I will say, we don't really get a lot of immediate follow-up on this. It is very much a set-up line for some storytelling, some exposition, which we're going to get down the road there. And we end this episode on what's a bombshell in universe, but the viewer basically knew...
You could have kind of put this together.
Yeah, like the viewer kind of knew this from... honestly, like 20 or 30 episodes ago, which is that Eureka knew Renton's dad, and of course she did. He headed the project that discovered her.
Right. Yes.
So it's sort of
be like It's the classic, like, I mean, look, Renton's a kid, but
Yes.
like, your dad found the Nervosh Type 0.
Yes.
Eureka piloted the Nervosh Type 0.
Your dad was the head of a project which studied the scub coral and determined it was conscious. Do you think perhaps he would have interacted with his prize test subject?
But, it's...
He generally isn't really paying attention when they're doing exposition.
Well, yes, and also, again, it's something that is much more obvious to the audience than to the characters.
Like Renton's naivety is part of his character, right?
Yes.
It is.
That he just sees Eureka as a normal girl and doesn't really care about all the like weird ancient robots, Coralian stuff. He just wants, to take the responsibility for Eureka's happiness.
Right. I mean, as we even see in the next episode, where Renton sort of missteps by treating Eureka as maybe too human, right? As like too much like a normal person, right?
Yeah.
Or expects things of her that a quote-unquote normal person would do.
Right.
Yeah, so let's move into that episode there.
Actually, one last thing. I was double-checking the scenes, and I will say, in Dominic's defense, in the very last scene he's present in this episode, he is trying to confirm with Dewey, wait, are there actually Coralians at the Capitol? And Dewey gives the classic, we gotta light the fire, Dominic.
Yes.
And Dominic, obviously still a putz, still loyal to the military, but he does at least look appropriately perturbed that Dewey is clearly committing a false flag operation here. But I
guess we can give the kid the minimal amount of credit.
He's still working on it, but at least I think there's a gear turning in his brain that people who do false flags, that's not a good thing.
But on the other hand, Anemone is happy now, so maybe it's...
look, again, it's a work in progress.
I mean, look, we have seen multiple times now that people get happier when they are away from Dominic. Coincidence? I think not. Anyway, let's move on to episode 38, Date of Birth. So this episode is named after the Japanese band Date of Birth, who have an incredibly weird and interesting history, actually. Speaking of Shibuya Kai, as we were just with Cornelius, they were in that genre briefly. They have sort of jumped between pop, new wave, rock, jungle, electronica, all sorts of stuff there. They were founded as a band called Mind Control in 1982, became Date of Birth in 1985, put out a whole bunch of singles before sort of going inactive in 2000 here. A couple of fun little anecdotes about this band there. Firstly, they performed the theme song for the Toho movie Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla. And I included that mostly so I could say Godzilla versus Space Godzilla, because hell, what a title there. They also had their own video game, which was called Planet Dob, as in Date of Birth, developed by Microvision, published by Hudson, released on the PlayStation in November 1999, to coincide with the album of the same name. There's a lot of weird stuff on PlayStation 1.
I was just about to say, like, from the console that brought you Pepsi Man.
Do not insult the classics, thank you.
Nothing but respect for my man Kotaro Ushikoshi.
Yes, Kotaro Ushikoshi's Pepsi Man there. But yes, a kind of like a weird genre-crossing band there. I'm not sure if this is named after any particular type track or just after the band themselves. I'll have to continue rooting around in their discography, but a fun reference there with some weird little twists there. But let's move on to what's really important about this episode: Norb's double cardboard box Fortress of Solitude.
So the man is lazy as a bum, but he does live in the like transforming cardboard box from Metal Gear Solid 5.
Yeah, I know, it's fantastic.
My guy Norb is bum maxing. He's just
he's turning bummery into an art. He's like the Diogenes of monks.
This thing's got This thing's got flaps on it, too, like an eye flap that opens up like a mail slot, man.
Yeah, it's so good that he opens his little flap to talk to people and then closes it again to indicate that he's done talking to people. You know, if I could interact with people that way, it would make my life so much easier. But it is the cardboard box equivalent of a 5-star hotel. It is wonderful, and I like it very much. There.
I really gotta wonder what kind of life Nord was living prior to getting picked up by Gecko State, man, because...
a life of quote-unquote prayer and meditation.
Yes. I do like that.
Labora et not labora.
I do like that.
When they say Nord's been missing for years, is that because he was actually in hiding, or just because he was like just slumming it somewhere and nobody bothered to look?
What better place to hide than in plain sight? I also like the fact that now that it's been established he's met Stoner, he is smoking all the time because Stoner also a big smoker there.
He was probably hiding in the Saddam Hussein hidey hole.
Oh my god!
now we have to Photoshop his stupid little cardboard box into that diagram. God damn it!
Perfect.
Oh, what did I tell you about inventing memes that have to be photoshopped up afterwards? There. But let's move on to the main thrust of this episode.
Yeah,
which is that. Wow, sex is funny, huh?
I mean, that is this episode.
Yes. I do also want to talk about how we get another appearance of the Gecko's weird shop, which I'm gradually becoming obsessed by.
Whenever people go to the shop in this show, we're going to get a weird ass filler episode.
So not only does the shop have a selection of up-to-date periodicals, apparently, it also has a clearance bin. How do you have a clearance bin on a shop with like a limited clientele? Like, what?
Hey man,
so good.
Items expire whether you sell them to 10 people or to 1,000 people.
Yes. Exactly.
In all seriousness, this episode starts with Renton sort of chewing out Eureka over the fact that she knew his father all along and never thought to mention it to him.
I find this... I get it why they do it thematically, but I find it incredibly out of character for Renton to get so aggressive with her.
At least at this point in the story, right?
Yeah.
It's like, considering how much he's grown as a character.
I agree with you, but also I do think that it's important that, we have had quite a few episodes of lovey-dovey. We understand each other and talk about our feelings, Renton and Eureka, for a while now. I do think it's important that they interject a little more friction back into the relationship. That's just good storytelling. Is it a little out of character? Perhaps, but I can understand him getting worked up in the heat of the moment, so to speak.
Right. I mean, to be generous, right? It's like, I think the big kicker here, right, is Eureka knew Adrock, and where the indignation from Renton comes from, I think maybe what Aqua and I are feeling is like the specific pointed way in which it is written feels like it was set up specifically to create this episode's drama, because Renton says specifically, why can't you understand? Any normal human would know that. And, you could say that this is just something that, Renton is saying in the heat of the moment, but, considering...
It's a little on the nose.
Yes, the repeated emphasis that Eureka is not a normal person. And Renton knows this. Renton has known Eureka is not a normal person since, episode 1.
I'm always saying this when I get upset at people, Why can't you be like a normal human?
Yeah, it's a little come on.
Yes. So perhaps a better idea than execution, but this somehow leads into a weird plot line where
bomb plot.
Yeah, this sort of super cliche anime plot. So Renton has decided to go to the one true source of understanding how girls think, which is sort of tawdry men's magazines from the local store. I do very much like the page on this magazine that just says in massive capital letters, "No love, no sex."
Yep.
You got was it the diagram of a kiss with a pie chart?
Yes, it's
like, what is that? I wish I knew Japanese well enough to know what that pie chart is saying. Like, what happens during a kiss 33% of the time? I'm so curious.
Maybe I'll have to run that screen through Google Translate or something there. But yes, he is caught by Hilda. There's some nice physical comedy here. I particularly appreciate the old try and lean around someone and they just shuffle the other way there. Hilda, being very suspicious about Renton's intent, decides to convene a council of dumbasses to talk about it.
He gets together the worst,
the stupidest idiots on the ship.
I must admit, as much as I like Hilda, this is a rare Hilda L.
Yes,
this is an uncommon own goal of hers. Like, because her intentions almost start out decent. She's like, okay, like Renton's clearly going through some stuff, but I don't know how to handle it, and I'm not a teenage boy, so clearly I need advice from some men to advise on how to approach this. Who are the men aboard the Gecko State? Fucking Matthew and Moondoggy.
And Gidget's here as well, just to complete the space case setup.
Because they explicitly show that all the competent people are doing something else.
True, yes. Stoner is ranting about the mainstream media.
Yes.
In particular.
Brooding in front of a projector.
Talho and Holland are explicitly doing a sort of strategy meeting with Kengo and Hap. And
yes, the room of actually competent people.
The actual adults in the room are over here.
Except maybe for Hap, but But anyway, yes, the Council of Dumbasses convenes, and I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I'm kind of with the dudes on this one. Like, I'm kind of with the whole let's just leave him alone and let him work it out thing, because honestly, that's what they should do.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that kind of gets set up here, right, is their misunderstanding is they jump to the conclusion that Renton and Eureka are potentially trying to become physically intimate, right? And the guys kind of, again, the way they deliver it is not defensible, but the general argument of he's a teenage boy, of course he's going to be thinking about this kind of stuff, right? That's fairly normal for a boy his age. And it's but then of course the delivery kind of shifts into a very different direction, right?
Yes.
But
let's say both sides are wrong. Both sides are wrong.
Well, here's the thing. It's a classic Moondoggy boondoggle, right? Because, Matthew does bring up...
Boondoggy, yeah.
Yeah, because, Matthew starts off... The scene started... Matthew's like, yeah, he's a teenage boy. He's gonna, be going through some shit. Let him figure it out. And, of course, classic Moondoggy has to fucking, bring up, wait... Can humans and Coralians even do it?
Look, it's not an unreasonable question.
No, that's a question for Misha. That's not a question.
This was perhaps not the correct venue to bring it up.
It's not for you.
I just find it especially funny because, credit where it's due, Doggy is the only dude on the ship, except for Holland, as of recently, who is actually getting some. So
I mean, it's implied that Matthew and Hilda are a couple,
Yes, but in terms of on-screen confirmation that they are having sex.
But so we then get two entirely different attempts to rectify the situation. Let's handle the boys first, shall we? Their decision is to go to Renton with a bunch of softcore mags and attempt to remodel his room into a love nest. Which
yes.
Hey man, if Lorp can make a beautiful estate out of some cardboard boxes, they can make a bow chicka bow wow parlor out of the same materials.
Like this fucking storage closet?
Yeah, like they're hanging like drapes on the walls and stuff.
Yeah,
like, they put this like toilet tube lamp over the light, and it is baffling. I have no idea what's going on here.
Well, they're trying to create mood lighting. They're trying to like soft lighting, the curtains for privacy, and maybe a little bit of a sound padding. It's the boys are doing their best with what they have, and what they have is 2 brain cells between the 3 of them.
Yes. It's also the implication here that Matthew just has a pile of nudie mags lying around, which is honestly the least surprising thing of all time there. Meanwhile, Eureka she has questions.
Yes.
And it turns out the best way to get answers to those questions is randomly wandering into Holland and Talho's ultrasound scan.
Yeah.
I mean, this is kind of Eureka's MO, right? This is not the first time she has just randomly wandered around the ship, and in fact, in this very same episode, she randomly wanders in on Stoner as he is
yes, that's
doing
true.
his rant about the mainstream media.
It is a little bit funny. I mean, I will say it's a small scene, but like Stoner Eureka scenes are not in high quantity in this show, and it is there is some goofy charm to Stoner is ranting about how the lamestream media won't report on the truth, and Eureka is going through her own bout of self-loathing and doubt. She's like, do I even deserve to be happy? And Stoner is like, I am not equipped to handle this in any capacity whatsoever.
I think this scene is also enhanced by, let's say, some slightly choppy animation where Stoner occasionally looks a little off model, let's say, which just makes the whole thing kind of even more surreal than it already is.
It is those 2 people having completely different conversation with one another, kind of.
Yes. I also want to highlight the animation with this scene with Eureka and Holland and Talho in the corridor.
Oh, yeah.
She is almost KyoAni-esque here. She's puffy and round and very goofy looking, and
she's drawn so intentionally young looking in this scene to just further emphasize the naivete of the questions she's asking.
Yes. And the ultimate result of this is that she thinks she has something of an epiphany regarding the importance of families and particularly father figures, because Holland, of course, is going to be a father. We see Talho getting her scan done, the baby inside her, and all that kind of stuff there. She then proceeds to phrase it in the worst possible way.
Of course, yes.
And this leads to the return of our favourite character, violence against children, Holland.
Yeah.
It's kind of shocking how up until a couple of episodes ago they sort of played the violence that Holland commits against Renton for drama, and now they're just way back to, I'll get that little brat, why you little, and play the fucking comedy music over it.
Yes.
They might as well. Look, in this case, right, where Holland thinks that Renton is trying to get Eureka teen pregnant, maybe an ass beating is warranted.
And to be fair, he also beats up Mathieu and Moondoggy, which, they probably deserve.
No, they definitely deserve it.
But yes, they might as well have a Roadrunner-esque cloud of dust behind Holland as he sprints down the corridor.
Man, the faces on fucking Moondoggy and Matthew when Holland catches them are so fucking good. It's it's just the peak we've been caught doing a bad face.
Yes. Just look, this is an incredibly old, cliched, hoary plotline. I still think this is kind of funny.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's really funny.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's perhaps a test. Look, if I was putting my critic hat, I would say that it's fun to put these characters in this situation because they've been well developed and therefore we understand instinctively that it fits their character roles. But on some level, it's also just funny to see, like, Macho and Moondoggy, two of the lamest people in history, try and enforce the bros before hoes law. And actually, I don't think we're allowed to say that, are we? Bros before LFOs. And Holland kind of like just comedy beat them up. It's is it out of step with the show's previously established message about violence? Yes. Is it funny? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And to be fair, Holland does 180 once he hears Renton's, teary-eyed story about how he just wants to know his dad better.
Yes. Holland, of course, also knew Adrock. It's worth pointing out.
Yes, it's right. I mean, it's a little bit of a goofy thing. It was like, you want to know about Adrock? Now, I could tell you. I won't. You should go talk to Eureka.
Which, kind of makes sense in context.
I think that's fair, but yes.
I think there is actually, I think there is a genuinely good character moment here, which is where Renton comes to terms with the idea that, like, he has carried anger and hatred against his father for, quote unquote, abandoning the family all his life. All his life he has kicked against the perception that he is the son of the famous Adrock, but he confesses here that actually, yes, he would like to know about his father, that underneath all that bluster, he does want to know that it's not even that he misses his father because he never knew him really, but there is kind of like a sympathetic impulse underneath all that, which is this moment of self-revelation for him, right? That he realizes that the reason he was angry with Eureka is because he cares about his father, even though he has basically spent his entire life either angry at his father or trying to pretend his father never existed.
Just because he wants to know, right? He wants to know where he came from and why his father, quote unquote, abandoned him, or at least why he has reason to believe that is what happened, because of course Renton does kind of change his mind about that whole thing at the end of this episode.
Yeah, and I think it's a good moment, and I think it's followed up with this good scene between Renton and Eureka, where we sort of loop back around to the beginning of the episode. They're crouching down by the Nervash. I like how this later scene emphasizes their distance by placing them separately, whereas the first scene had them side by side. And I think the crew Scooby stacking themselves outside the door
always
good,
funny, a classic.
Always a great,
and where Holland first comes up to them and says, "What are you doing? Like, get back to work."
And then the next, we see him as part of the stack. Yes, but and forgive me if I'm mistaken here, but this is the first time we have seen Adrock as a actual character in the narrative, right? This is the first time he has appeared as something other than an image on a wall or kind of like
he was in Holland's he was he was an extant living character in Holland's backstory,
right, but we didn't really he was an unseen presence there, right? Like, we didn't actually
presence, but he was he was actually in those shots where Diane he was in some shots.
Oh, right. Yes, you're right. Yes, in the shot
because Diane hides behind Adrock when Holland is mean to her.
Okay, so not okay. So I was mistaken. This isn't the first time we've seen him present in a scene, but it is still a fairly rare occurrence to actually see.
Definitely,
him.
Yes.
It's kind of the first time where he does something.
Right.
Sure.
And this is, although it has been hinted at obliquely quite a few times, this is the first time where we see what actually happened to him, which is, he was caught in the Seven Swell effect, and he was in the Nervash with Eureka. There is obviously some visual parallel here between him and Renton, and he pulled the compact drive and sort of vanished into nothingness with it. And so I think this is like a fun little reconstruction in the sense that, we were told Adrock was the ultimate hero of the world. Then we were told that was actually a fake, made up propaganda thing. But he really did save the world, just not in the way that the government has presented.
Right, like to be specific, right? This is like, because we have seen the seventh swell effect happen before, but like the implications here is that like Adrock and Eureka were kind of testing the capabilities of the Nervash, and like this was, I guess, framed as a potentially more catastrophic seventh swell, right?
Like, it certainly seems like it was completely out of control, right? It was
right, and that like, basically Adrock like prematurely aborts the operation, right? And him pulling out the compact drive is what leads to whatever happened to him.
I got the feeling that he was even like that. Adrock realized that what they were doing was going too far, that it was going to hurt the Coralians or the planet in some way, and he deliberately sabotaged the operation, sacrificing himself. And then the Federation then spun that into, he saved us all.
Yeah.
Not that we were trying to destroy everything. Like,
I feel like, and again, this is just a vibe, so I can't, but I feel like the implication is that they were going to wake up the Coralians, right? Like, I feel like
what Dewey is doing now, basically.
Yes, the implication was that the seventh swell would wake the Coralian and would lead to the end of the world, as we have just established there. So it's sort of left unclear, and it's sort of not really important, to be honest. Actually, what's important is that Adrock did what he did to protect. He even says it, to protect his children, but also to protect Eureka. And so we get this sort of comedy, sort of like sincere bit where Eureka says, "Oh, Adrock is my dad," and I'll give them credit. There's a bunch of really cheap jokes you could have made here.
Big third off when she says, "Your dad is kind of my dad."
Yes, yes. But they do not go for the obvious jokes, and I will give them some credit for that. I think that, and it as a result, it is kind of a sweet moment. I think it is kind of a nice moment for Renton and Eureka to sort of rebond and sort of close the distance between them once and for all there.
So obligatory Holland joke. Not only did he get cucked as Renton, as Eureka's boyfriend, he also got cucked as her father figure.
Wow. Harsh.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Truly, the Thurston family are the bane of his existence.
Anyway, there's a couple of little plot things to sort of wrap up the episode here. Firstly, we get a return of Stoner's Pacific State photo, which we saw at the end of the titular episode there. We see Stoner practicing good ethics in photojournalism, which is that he asks if he can use the image of Renton and Eureka before just going ahead and doing it there. So, Stoner, ethical journalist.
Yes.
Yeah, we talk about, they sort of make text what was only subtext before, which is Stoner talks about how he hopes it will be a symbol of the union of humanity and the scub coral, right? That it will be sort of their propaganda, their sort of aspirational image that will lead sort of their version of the story, which presumably they are going to publish in Ray Out there.
Right.
And so, this scene is not important in a technical sense, but it does sort of conclude the little arc that Stoner has had over the last couple of episodes, and especially in this episode and the episode beforehand, where, he's sort of railing against the media. He's annoyed that Dewey scooped him by getting his version of the story out first. And he sort of resolves, no, I'm still going to tell the story. I'm still going to put our view out there, and it doesn't matter if we have lost the propaganda war or stuff, or anything like that. We still need to get our story out there and tell the world that there is another way.
Yeah, I think this even goes back to like what he said to Holland a couple of episodes ago, where he was like, "Yeah, I'm not a fighter, I'm not a killer. I'm looking for something that I can do to help our struggle, right?" And it seems that now he has found it.
Right. Yeah, and I think that I think that as we've said, his story arc has sort of been very subtly told in these past few episodes, but the idea that you should still tell your story and say what you have to say, even if you don't necessarily believe that it will make an impact against sort of the big, loud noise of Dewey's sort of propaganda flood. That's a pretty good one, and a nice sort of subtle bit of background storytelling here.
AI slop quality journalism is hard to find.
It's true. It's true.
Subscribe to my Patreon.
Yes. Speaking of Dewey, we cut back to him committing war crimes by just randomly gassing out the Sage's palace.
Very funny that they just sort of mentioned that. It's like, hey, it's Dewey. Oh, man, what does he want now? Yeah, he's gassing out the palace.
He's gassing the lobby.
It does feel like kind of an unnecessary detail that's just thrown in to show, oh, by the way, this guy's super evil, in case you didn't notice. But, yes. He then invades the Sage's chambers, and apparently they have got their holo projector set up so like anybody who walks into the holo projector area will just be projected as a massive hologram. So we get massive Dewey. Maybe it's just me, but I was kind of unclear whether he was actually there or whether he was just like hijacking the feed or something.
I think it's probably meant to be a little ambiguous until like he commits to shooting them.
Yeah, I suppose that could be a deliberate choice there. But yes, the long and short of it here is that the Sages go like, curse you, Dewey, curse your sudden but inevitable betrayal. And Dewey goes, yeah, that's right. And he just shoots them. Or rather, he shoots the two dudes. Turns out Coda, the only Sage we have known by name, saw which way the wind was blowing and bends the knee instead.
Honestly, surprised she didn't just, she wasn't really a part of the plan, right? I expected her to turn on the other two judges and sort of make it possible for Dewey to kill them, but he didn't even need her. She just sort of survives, and then she's like, woo, yeah, go you, Dewey. You're the Supreme Emperor now.
It's kind of unclear whether she was an inside man or whether, this is just her seeing which way the wind blows. Certainly, it seems like a conclusion that she had come to quite some time ago, right? There's no surprise from her here,
I don't know, maybe she was responsible for the fact that their throne room had apparently a single bodyguard,
I mean, there's also the fact that, why did they not just go... I guess maybe a space elevator takes some time to prep, right? But you would have thought they would have retreated up to their space station and then just, cut the cord or something. But
then how do they get back? I mean, I think the implication is just that they're, arrogant, right?
I guess
they're arrogant and they're slow, right? They are too slow to respond to Dewey, right? This often is what happens in these types of coups, right? Is that Dewey mobilizes so quickly in the span of these two episodes, right?
I mean, I can't remember if it's Holland or Stoner, but one of them specifically say, "Oh yeah, we reckon he can root and branch out all the regime loyalists in 2 weeks."
No, that's Talho who said this.
It's Talho, sorry.
Needs to replace everyone with a sycophant.
That's a real fast coup.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense because Talho used to work in intelligence, right?
Right. Yeah.
You want to know.
I mean, it could also just be the implication that how many loyalists are there even in this military, right? A big aspect that we've kind of gotten at is the Federation is such a large, bloated, and implied to be bureaucratically split organization, right? You have military outposts so spread apart, and the Sages are not present at all in the day-to-day politics of this world.
Yeah, I mean, they have literally been in space for most
in
of
their
the time,
literal
right?
ivory tower, right? And so the moment you have Dewey, who is again an ideologue, a populist even, right? It would not surprise me if it's not just that, it's rooting out the Federation loyalists, as it is I bet the military bends the knee pretty quickly to the new Generalissimo because that's somebody they actually know, as opposed to the sages who they may have never seen in their entire lives.
Yeah.
I mean, also, if you're in the military or in the police and you have to choose between the guy who says, yo, you need to do paperwork and negotiate all day versus the guy who says, you get to shoot people.
I mean, that historically accurate as well.
Yeah.
And I think, deliberately, I think the deaths of the male sages are very underplayed. They are grimy and dirty and very undramatic. Right? Dewey just shoots them in the head. There's a fair bit of explicit blood and gore. And it's just a very undignified end to them. And I think that's deliberate, right? It's just kind of, actually, these people were never that important.
Mm-hmm.
They had airs and graces on themselves, but they weren't important. And at the end, they are completely impotent to stop him. There is literally nothing they can do.
They were the figureheads of a sort of anonymous system, right?
Right, exactly. And the one of the most dangerous things for kind of like a centralized anonymous system is a dangerous ideologue like Dewey, somebody who has the force of personality to take over, and so the conclusion of this episode really is sort of, oh, okay, Dewey is now supreme leader of the government. Like, he has eliminated all threats to his position. He is the uncontested leader of the bad guys there, which, as viewers, we have known all along, but it certainly marks an escalation in world, in his threat level. And that's kind of where these episodes leave us. It's in a fairly, not necessarily a grim place, but certainly Dewey, after his setbacks in the last couple of episodes, is back in the ascendancy here.
I mean, I think these episodes have been important to, centralize Dewey as the primary antagonist of Eureka 7. Because, as we talked about, right, Dewey was such a distant figure in the first half of the story that I think it's important to kind of get him here in the spotlight.
Yeah, absolutely. He's by kind of demonstrating his propaganda power and his rise to supreme executive power, it sort of re-emphasized his dangerousness, right? Because this is just good storytelling. After we've seen him outwitted by the crew, there's a danger that he could sort of become a paper tiger, and by giving him such a big win so shortly after he's been defeated, it just establishes again that he really is dangerous, that he really is competent, that he's somebody who cannot be underestimated there.
And that, perhaps the biggest skill these kinds of people have is that they can spin anything, right? That a demagogue can use everything to his advantage.
Right, yeah, that's the thing, and more implicitly, it sets up the status quo of the show was always ostensibly the Gecko State versus the world, but the Gecko State began this show as the cool rebels that you like to imagine the people were on the side of, and this very clearly draws the line that actually no, the people are largely on the side of Dewey, the bad guy, and so the Gecko State more than ever are a true outlaw organization.
They have been officially designated domestic terrorists.
Well, I think they passed that quite a long time ago, but
probably been that for a while.
Now that it's who needs the Gecko State anyway? When the cool Agaha squad, led by the lovely Anemone, is here,
the beautiful goddess of war.
Yes, she surely will save us all. We'll find out if she'll save us all anyway in our next set of episodes, which will be episode 39, Join the Future, and episode 40, Cosmic Trigger. That will be what we will be looking at next time. Aqua, any final words before we wrap up here?
Whoever is supplying the Gecko State with stuff for in their little shop, I just gotta say, he's probably the reason why Dewey is always one step ahead and knows what they're going to do. That guy cannot be trusted. He is an agent of chaos. He stocks the little market with all sorts of stuff that causes conflict on the ship.
Like girly mags.
Yes, and he probably has the entire thing bugged. That's my theory.
Okay, so you're going with secret mastermind retail franchisee. Yep. G, what's your insane crackpot theory?
I'm sitting here just even trying to remember what happens next, and we are entering like.
I'll tell you what happens next. There's a football game.
Look, I didn't even want to allude to that because I feel like that's such a great wild swing. But yes,
it's in the preview.
Just yes. Well, what I'm getting at is that I remember major events from this final stretch of Eureka 7, but that does not fill out 12 episodes. We are entering some truly I do not recall what happens at certain junctures at this point anymore. I cannot even begin to fathom a guess.
Ah, well, that just makes it more exciting, huh?
Mostly just looking forward to an OP that doesn't look like it was animated in the Soviet Union.
Ouch. Well, don't worry, you're going to get a heck of an OP in just a few more episodes.
We can definitely talk about that.
When it happens, you will not mistake it for anything else.
Yes, for sure.
Or maybe you will. We will see there. In any case, that brings an end to another episode of Blue Mondays. Thank you, everyone, for listening there. Just do our housekeeping. You can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Music, Spotify, Amazon Music, Podbean, Stitcher, and on YouTube, of course. Please let us know what you think. Leave us comments, leave us likes, whatever you want to know. Let us know your insane crackpot theories about the dude running the shop. Honestly, the shop... going to dominate these podcasts from now on. It's just so fascinating there. All that remains for me to say is to say thank you to Aqua. Thank you, Aqua.
You're welcome.
Thank you, G.
Always glad to be on.
And we'll see you all next time.